Okay, our next question will come from Bill Miller, and go first to Jonathan Dine.
Are you satisfied with this country's foreign policy in dealing with Iraq and Afghanistan? If you're not satisfied, what do you think President Obama and his advisors should consider in the way of changes?
I am not satisfied. As a libertarian, I seek a world at peace with other nations. I look to Thomas Jefferson's quote for inspiration on foreign policy: peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none. I believe that America should stop acting as the world's policeman and take care of our borders and secure our country first. I do believe in a strong national defense, but the optimum word is defense, not offense. We don't have the money to continue the wars. We're wasting over $1 trillion since 2001 just on bombs. I think our money could be more wisely spent here at home.
Todd Akin.
It's important to have a foreign policy to start with. You have to have some basic principles, guidelines, and perspectives of where you want to go as a president in terms of foreign policy. That needs to include Iraq, it needs to include Afghanistan, it needs to include a whole lot of other countries as well. And the problem is that we haven't had that. In fact, what it seems like, the weak and vacillating policies we've had have almost punished our friends and helped our enemies. Right off the bat, we decided to turn our back on two of our allies, the Czech Republic and Poland, where we had plans to build missile defense. Instead, we gave that as a concession to Russia. How much has Russia helped us on Iran? How much has Russia helped us in, for instance, the situation in Afghanistan or other places? And giving special attention to Chavez and then turning our back on the Netanyahu when he wanted to meet with the president, one of our allies. The sending of mixed signals is very destructive to foreign policy, and you have to first of all start with something that's strong. In the case of Egypt, for instance, we've talked a little bit about that in a press release. This is a country that should be protecting our embassy, not burning our flags. And why are we going to give them money? I say, let's withhold any money for Egypt until they start acting like a nation, protect our embassy, and start not fundamentally insulting us by burning our flags.
Claire McCaskill.
The war in Iraq was a mess. And when I went to Washington, I went with the eye of an auditor to look at something that my predecessor in this seat felt pretty strongly about, and that was war profiteering. I can assure you Harry Truman is spinning in his grave over what went on in Iraq. Congressman Akin wouldn't even vote to require competitive contracts in Iraq for the oil infrastructure. I helped establish the War Contracting Commission when I got to Washington. I went to Iraq and Afghanistan on contracting oversight. No one had paid much attention to this. We found in the War Contracting Commission $60 billion. Keep in mind, that's almost 3 years of the entire Missouri budget that just went up in smoke, in waste, fraud, abuse. No one was minding the store. We have now begun to clean that up. In Afghanistan, I support the mission of training their police and their army, but what we're doing in terms of spending our money on infrastructure is wrong. We are now doing the same thing in Afghanistan that we did in Iraq. We're investing in highways, power plants, water projects that they cannot maintain, they can't afford to sustain, and many times they're getting blown up or not used because they don't have the expertise. We need to pull that infrastructure money out, it's billions of dollars, and bring it back to the United States of America, where we need roads and bridges. We need a big bridge near Washington, Missouri that the people of Bill Miller's community talk to me about all the time. We need more highways here in Missouri. We need lock and dam projects on the Missouri River. We should be building those projects here, not in the desert in Afghanistan in a country that can't afford them. So I disagree with that.
Congressman Akin, the senator, mentioned something about your position on competitive contracts in Iraq. Did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, the situation is that I believe competitive bidding is a good thing, essentially. What you had going in Iraq is pretty interesting, though, because you had people that were terrorists, and anything anybody did, they were going to blow it up or shoot anybody associated with it. And so the whole contracting and bidding process in Iraq is a little bit unique and unlike anything that we normally see. And of course, the attacks on the idea of roads in Afghanistan, the purpose of that is the big economy in Afghanistan is heroin. And heroin you can put on a motorcycle and take somewhere. If you don't have roads, you have no way to grow other crops other than heroin. There's some logic. Look, I've had a kid serving in Afghanistan. I've had a kid almost killed in Iraq in Fallujah. I understand the cost of what we're doing, and I want to do it the right way because I have skin in the game, you might say.
Senator McCaskill, did you want an additional 45 seconds there?
Well, there was nothing about the contracting in Iraq that didn't require a competitive look. There was nothing about the contracting that shouldn't have been. And by the way, after all these things were exposed, they finally did begin to compete these contracts. They were doing cost-plus contracts in Iraq. They were monogramming hand towels to drive up the cost of the hand towels to the American government. Can you imagine what Harry Truman would have said to those guys? I think he would have used language that was not polite. That was the contract, the Halliburton, famous Halliburton KBR contract that they completely took advantage of the American people on. This was a bill that would have required competitive bidding on those kinds of contracts, and Congressman Akin voted no.